This is George Herman at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, where 15 months ago, the last of the Ranger series, as you've seen, scored that signal success before crashing into the moon. Tonight, Surveyor 1, first of a new series of U.S. moon probes designed to soft land on the moon, is making its final approach, aiming at a spot on the moon less than 600 miles from where the burned-out remains of Russia's Luna 9 sent back to Earth the first surface pictures of the moon some 4 months ago. You are listening over my voice, perhaps, to the voice of Dr. Albert Hibbs in the control room, giving final information. What he has been telling us so far is that Surveyor 1 has been put through a perfect preliminary maneuver. It has already been commanded to turn, to roll, to maneuver itself into its final attitude in which it will fire its retro rockets to slow it down as it makes its way rapidly towards the moon. The time to firing of the retro rockets, about 12 minutes. The time to touchdown on the Earth, as you saw, about 14.5 minutes now. This is not the only space operation of the day. On the Cape Kennedy, the ATDA, the target vehicle for Gemini 9, blasted off on schedule, but there may be a problem. The aerodynamic shrouding, which protected it on its takeoff through the atmosphere, still seems to be in place. This may make it useless for the astronauts for any rendezvous and docking. And of course, as you've heard, Gemini 9 did not take off. A recent announcement from the Cape says that NASA engineers determined that 2 logic modules in the inertial guidance systems failed, and says NASA they have been replaced and are now undergoing systematic tests, and the flight has been rescheduled for 8:39 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday morning. The tests conducted by the monitoring personnel here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory on Surveyor 1 have shown everything working in good style. All the temperatures are within the required parameters. All the speeds are approximately as expected. There's a very intricate table of speeds for the vehicle as it approaches the moon. Right about now, it should be approaching the moon at a speed of about 4,500 miles an hour, accelerating continuously under the weak gravitational pull of the moon as it moves towards it. Its altitude perhaps 1,100, perhaps 1,200 miles off the surface of the moon. Surveyor's soft landing techniques have not yet been tested. There's no place on the Earth with a vacuum or with the moon's low gravity, 1/6 of our gravitational pull here on the Earth. The closest thing to a test of the system was conducted on the New Mexico desert, and CBS News correspondent Terry Drinkwater was on the spot.
On the moon most likely looks like this. At Holloman Air Force Base, the craft was dropped from a balloon to fall towards Earth. The main retro rocket has already been ejected. The craft is now traveling at about 50 miles an hour. 3 controllable rocket engines slow the descent. 2 radar devices on board tell the tiny rocket engines how much thrust they should expend. The rate of descent becomes slower and slower until the Surveyor is traveling at 3.5 miles an hour. Then at 14 feet above the landing site, the engines are cut off. The Surveyor falls the remaining distance and soft lands at about 8 miles an hour. When it hit on the New Mexico desert, there was a cloud of sand and dust. But when it lands on the moon, the Surveyor will weigh far less than it does on Earth because the moon has so little gravity. Scientists expect there will be less dust on the moon, too, and they'll know for sure when the Surveyor takes its first pictures.
Surveyor 1, now 63 hours and 24 minutes into its historic mission, hopefully for a soft landing on the moon. Everything going extremely well. The target spot, the final estimation is that the Surveyor will land within 8 miles of the target spot. 9 minutes approximately to ignition of the retro rocket, that solid-fueled rocket which will slow it down and bring it to a slow speed for a final landing on the moon. CBS News coverage of the landing of Surveyor on the moon will continue in a moment. And once again, a good report from control room here. Everything is in nominal shape. Surveyor is in good shape. There is Dr. Al Hibbs giving us the word.
We are now turning on the thermal controls for the fuel tank vernier line, tank number 2. Then the oxidizer tank 2, lines 1, vernier lines 1, oxidizer tank 2, thermal control power is off. Vernier lines 3, oxidizer tank 3, thermal control power off. Power is off on the vernier lines for tanks 1, 2, and 3.
A test of the vernier engines, the three engines which will determine the final speed and angle of approach of Surveyor 1 as it attempts this first American soft landing on the moon. The trickiest leg of Surveyor's journey is this approach to, and hopefully, this soft landing on the moon. Surveyor has coasted to less than 1,000 miles of the moon, as this animation shows. It turns around on command from the Earth to put it into the proper landing position. Its three legs are to be pointed toward the moon, and that includes also, of course, the big retro rocket and the radar antenna. Surveyor's speed increases to more than 6,000 miles an hour as the moon's weak gravity tugs at the spacecraft. At this point, when this point comes, Surveyor will have to do its own thinking, although there is a backup system here on Earth. There's not time enough for all the backup information to do the job, so much of it must go through radar and computers on board the spacecraft. The altimeter sends out signals, radar signals to the moon. When it senses Surveyor is only 52 miles, it automatically orders the firing of the large retro rocket, as you can see. The three smaller vernier rockets, which you heard being tested out before, hold Surveyor steady, aim it to the proper degree for an absolutely vertical landing. The spacecraft slows down from 6,000 to 250 miles an hour, and the burned-out retro rocket is ejected. Its job is done. The vernier rockets have taken over, continuing to slow the spacecraft down to within 2,500 feet of the moon. Radar signals again checking the distance. Continuously checked by radar, not only for distance, but for correct attitude, correct rate of speed. A few feet away from the moon, the vernier rockets cut off, and Surveyor 1 falls. It falls landing at a speed of about 14 feet per second, which sounds a lot, but actually here on Earth it's about the equivalent of what you hit the ground with when you jump off of a chair or a table or a desk, about a little over 3 feet. Everything continues normal. All systems go. Time now 5 minutes and about 15 seconds to retro fire. From retro fire, as you saw in the animation, from retro fire to the actual touchdown, approximately 3 minutes. There's the beep, which tells us once again that we'll be hearing from Dr. Hibbs some word from the control center, Surveyor control here on the progress.
In 10 seconds, the AMR power will be turned on. 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. The command has gone to turn on the altitude marking radar power.
Altitude marking radar to determine the height above the moon and the speed of the approach. Again, successful command executed, checked by telemetry.
The command in the register. To be sent next is thrust phase electrical power turn on.
Everything approximately on schedule. The schedule at this point is almost automatic.
The altitude marking radar is on.
Altitude marking radar, a critical point. The altitude marking radar is vital to the success of Surveyor 1's landing.
20 seconds for the thrust phase power.
And again now, about 4 minutes to firing, actual firing of the big solid fuel retro rocket.
10.
And again, marking time to one of the critical
4,
points.
3, 2, 1, mark. The command has gone to turn on thrust phase electrical power. The telemetry indicates it is on.
Another milestone. You can hear perhaps the faintest shadow of relief in the professional voice of Dr. Hibbs as he reports another successful.
We are now 3 minutes and 30 seconds from retro ignition.
The time of the impact on the moon has changed from time to time during the course of the evening, but by the most fractional amounts.
Go to the 1 minute 30 seconds. Correction, 1 minute 30 seconds to enable the altitude marking radar. Incidentally, a slight change from my previous announcements. I will be giving you descent speeds in miles per hour during the descent of the retro phase. Altitudes in feet, speeds in miles per hour.
At this point, the altitude should be on the order of 205 miles above the surface of the moon. The velocity should be about 5,600 miles per hour.
When that switch is thrown, then the next time that radar sees something that looks like the moon at the right altitude, it'll turn on the retro. Up until that switch is thrown, it cannot initiate the retro, even if it accidentally gets the wrong signal.
In other words, Surveyor 1 still under the control of the Goldstone station here, still under the control of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory as it speeds rapidly, approaching 5,800 miles an hour towards the surface of the moon.
Before we enable the altitude marking radar. At 14 minutes and 37 seconds after 11, the emergency signal will be sent to back up the marking radar's mark.
Once again, double security.
10 seconds to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark.
A critical pause.
Telemetry indicates it is now enabled.
Very good. This means that now Surveyor 1 is under its own brain
We're
power.
now 1 minute and 30 seconds away from expected retro ignition.
And at this point, it's in the hands of the computer aboard Surveyor 1. The radar, the computer, and the rocket guide it from here on. And ignition only about 1 minute and 14 seconds away. This is the critical moment. This is the critical few moments, actually.
We're 60 seconds from the expected time when we get that first mark. From then on, there will be a 7.8 second built-in delay before the ignition.
And standing with his hand to his chin, watching, obviously tense, Walter Eichwald, the director of the
The
operation.
verniers will turn on approximately 1 second before the main retro. 30 seconds to go.
30 seconds to retro fire.
20 seconds to go before we expect the marking radar to turn on to send its mark. 10 seconds waiting for the marking radar. 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. We should now get verification of the marking signal.
And what you are
AMR
hearing is
mark.
the actual sound of the telemetry from the rocket, from the spacecraft. The main rocket has fired.
Retro is now firing.
Retro rocket is firing, a critical item. And a sudden burst of applause here in the auditorium at the Jet Propulsion
We are
Laboratory.
now at 5,148 miles an hour. Down to 116,000 feet, 4590.
6G velocity.
30 seconds of
Now
flight.
down to 63,000 feet, 4,900, 3,900 miles per hour. 8 G's acceleration. We are now at 30,000 feet. Retro burnout is confirmed.
Just on the nose.
32,000 feet.
32,000 feet.
Almost exactly on the predicted
400
figures.
feet per second vertical velocity. 28,000 feet.
425 feet per second.
425 feet per second.
4,000 feet.
24,000 feet. Engineering commutator 3 has been turned on. We are in lock with the engineering 3 data. Strain gauges are reading out. These strain gauges will give us indication about touchdown.
400 feet per second.
400 feet per second.
12,000 feet.
12,000 feet.
Well within the parameters.
10,000.
10,000 feet. All signals are normal.
8,000.
8,000 feet.
250 feet per second.
250 feet per second. 8,000 feet. 200 feet per second.
Yes, looks good.
An extraordinary moment. What may be in the making here one of the most surprising and dramatic
Surveyors reported
successes
in
of the United
excellent
States
condition.
space
All
program.
signals look good. 4,000 feet, stable.
4,000 feet is stable.
And stable. That was a key word. Unknown was the effect of the possibly not extended
1,000
antenna
foot
boom.
mark.
1,000 foot mark.
800 feet.
38 seconds to
600
go.
feet. 400 feet. 200 feet.
100 feet per second.
100 feet.
100 feet. 100 feet. 13 foot per second.
13 feet per second speed.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Before touchdown.
All now depends on the stability, the attitude stability of the Surveyor 1.
Signal strength is reported at minus 125.5 dBm. We'll now await further indication on the condition of the Surveyor.
The Surveyor has landed.
Thrust phase power is being turned off. That has been commanded. Thrust phase power is off.
Astonishing success of Surveyor 1, which was supposed to be the first of 4 tests of our ability to see if we could land a Surveyor craft softly on the surface of the moon. So far, all indications are astonishing. The Surveyor is on the surface of the moon. It is broadcasting signals. It appears to be undamaged. Still unknown whether it will be able to erect all the proper apparatus, the large antenna, the high gain antenna needed for good signals.
That's the radar system that controls the final touchdown is now being turned off. That is now off.
The Surveyor program, for all its criticism, has successfully done in this one shot something that it took the Soviet Union 9 tries, 9 lunar firings to accomplish, a soft landing on the moon. What remains to be seen is whether it is a further success in the sense that we will get acceptable and useful pictures from the surface of the moon. This was one of the, I think it's fair to say, most unexpected, most dramatic successes. A NASA official told us a little earlier this evening, a surprising quote, that the amount and the extent of the confusion here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory Auditorium could probably be attributed to the fact that nobody expected it to be so successful. They had not planned on success. They had covered most of the contingencies of how they would explain failure. Now they find themselves with a magnificent success to explain, to detail, and to show to the world. The first major test, first and major experiment, is a picture of one of the 3 tripod footpads to see whether it has sunk in. We have here, if I can reach it, things are kind of strewn around here. This is actually, wait a second, let's listen to Dr. Hibbs.
Now turned off. We're getting good engineering commutator 2 data.
Good data. Still, every single aspect that has been tested has been magnificently successful in this landing of Surveyor 1 softly on the surface of the moon. Reading the instruments in Surveyor control, a moment of extreme tension again as they check.
There was no loss of lock with the Surveyor during the complete descent.
In other words, data was received throughout the entire descent.
Strain gauge power is now being turned
Mr.
off.
Parks, the project manager, reading the instruments among his assistants and his associates in the control room, Surveyor 1 control room here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Reference made to the touchdown strain gauges. If no picture should come from the Surveyor television camera, the strain gauges will give us a lot of information about the crust of the moon.
A return from the moon just because of the speed of light. So all of these verifications can't come back any faster than 2.6 seconds.
The speed of light, 186,000 miles a second. The distance of the moon, about 240,000 miles. Round trip, about 480,000
Strain
miles.
gauge power is off. The next command now being sent is to lock the landing gear. That has been sent.
Surveyor being
The next command will
checked.
be to turn off the engineering commutators and turn on the coast-based commutators, which cycle through 120 separate bits of data.
This is the room that is called the health room. Its job throughout this 65-hour, 63-hour mission has been to check the entire health of every single part of the bird throughout, to check whether every part of the telemetry was properly operating, to check whether everything was reporting. This is the place where they first found that one antenna might not be properly extended, and where they have tried since to evaluate the difference that this might make in the descent. The problem was not great because the antenna which was not extended properly, antenna A, was receiving and was sending signals adequately. In fact, as far as anyone could tell here in the health room, it was receiving and sending signals about as well as it would had it been fully extended. Now, if all goes well, 10 minutes involved in the pictures, perhaps 10 minutes to go. Now, the pictures themselves are going to be taken by one of the most ingenious of the various gadgets. I grunt a little as I pick it up. This is one of the actual television cameras. Let's listen to Dr. Hibbs.
The coast phase commutator has been turned on. Both of these events have been verified by telemetry.
Successful commands continuing in a steady stream to go to Surveyor 1 on the surface of the moon and to be answered satisfactorily, and a handshake in the control room at the continued flow of successes.
Signal strength from the moon that we have an excellent margin over the required signal strength, a 10 dB margin. That means that the signal strength is 10 times stronger than the minimums necessary to receive 200-line television pictures.
Still unknown whether the larger antenna can be successfully erected in order to get the 600-line really fine definition pictures of the moon. That is yet to come. It has not yet been ordered. Still, Project Director Parks. And now, once again, the television camera, which is to do the main job throughout this first phase of Surveyor's presence on the moon.
Now waiting the next
This is the
sequence.
Surveyor camera. Its head tilts, its head rotates really, I should say, first, and on top of it, a mirror which tilts up and down. Between these two signal direction changers, the rotating head and the tilting mirror, Surveyor should be able to take pictures in a full 360-degree arc and up and down to a considerable extent. This means that Surveyor, if its pictures come through well, either the 200-line or the 600-line, will not only be able to take pictures of the surface of the moon, but unlike previous rockets, will be able to survey itself. Will be able to show the watchers on the ground how every part of the Surveyor spacecraft successfully made the trip through space, what every part of it looks like on the ground. The camera rotating, showing the ground by turning down and heading up again to show the horizon, commanded from the ground in steps as it moves from one side to the other. The first and the most important picture it is scheduled to take is of one of the 3 tripod foot pads. These are the crushable sponge plastic foot pads covered with aluminum for protection. When they hit the ground, they will be squeezed, pressured if it hits hard. If it lands at a normal speed, they will land quite solidly but will not be crushed. The first picture that this television camera will take, it will turn its head, tilt its mirror, and take a picture of this foot pad. The question is, will the foot pad be buried deep in dust? Will there be a drift of lunar dust, as some scientists have speculated? Will it show by its position in the dust that the soft surface of the moon is tricky, is dangerous, is going to be something very difficult that our Apollo astronauts will have to look for? Or will it, on the other hand, perhaps be supported partly off the crust? May part of it be on a rock and the rest of it off the ground, showing that the crust beneath the rock was hard, strong, and can safely support a considerable weight of an Apollo astronaut and his lunar excursion module when it touches down on the surface of the Earth. That is to be the subject of the first picture. However, the first picture may not be, this picture of this tripod, may not be of usable quality, because in addition to the problem of photographing the tripod foot pad itself, the first picture is really a test of the camera. It has to be lined up, its aperture tested, its focus tested, its entire engineering and mechanics tested. Now, CBS News correspondent...
The station has right now reported itself ready. The station has reported itself ready to receive 200-line television. And the command link between the operations area here in Pasadena and the Goldstone site has now been turned over to the Space Science Chief, Jack Lindsley, who will now direct the commands for the first television picture. He is now directing the station to turn on the camera power. That has been sent. Camera power command on has been transmitted. The next command will be The telemetry indicates it's on. The next command is going out to turn on the 200-line mode of transmission in the spacecraft.
We may be seeing history in a moment here. Keep our eyes on the television.
We are awaiting verification of that mode, and next command will be to turn on the iris servo motor. That is now being sent. It is sent. We are now waiting. The next command will be to start the frame. The camera is now warming up. We are standing by for the start frame command.
Now here in the auditorium,
Now
of the
waiting
Jet
the
Propulsion
start frame
Laboratory,
command.
lights being turned off, television lights and room lights, so that the picture as it comes from the moon can be projected on the screen for all the newsmen and the guests here in the JPL auditorium to see the picture as it comes in. And here the technicians keeping a sharp eye on the signal being sent from the moon.
The command has been directed from the space science area. The command has been sent to start the frame.
We'll know in a moment.
We anticipate that this, as we pointed out, this first frame may not be the best possible, but the frame has been started. We are receiving a picture. Video is being received.
Now, keep our eye on it. Here
Now
it comes,
coming
Dr.
through.
Urey. Here it comes. Yes.
Down the spacecraft. And there's the
A very soft picture
Picture is now coming through.
showing the foot pad of the tripod and part of the spacecraft. There it is, one of the disc-like foot pads.
As anticipated, the contrast between the moon and the pad is extremely clear picture. Extremely clear picture of the pad on the spacecraft. And
An
the
incredible succession of scientific
slightly
firsts from Surveyor Moon. Surveyor 1 on the moon. Dr. Urey, I doubt very much you'll get any scientific results out of this first picture.
The space area, Space Chief is now directing a change in iris from the iris setting of 22 to an iris setting of 5.6 in order to be able to get a better picture of the dark area. We are receiving the second picture. It's now coming through.
Here we go, Dr. Urey. This one I think will be of more interest to you. This stepped up somewhat, may perhaps even show the horizon.
There is the next picture. There is an Omni antenna. That is the surface of the moon, and one of the Omni antennas in view.
Yes, a crater. The dark spot is probably a crater.
Now, this is the dark spot, Dr. Urey, that we see in the left side of the picture, left of the antenna. An oval thing looks almost like a footprint. That is presumably a crater.
I should think so.
And how about the small, that is a crater, irregular in shape, presumably.
This is very likely Omni A that you're looking at.
You see, there is
pointer
a
showing.
regular
indicating that it
fluttered
is now
appearance on the thing. I think that's
That is presumably electronic, yes.
That's false.
But we do
But
see...
there are irregularities on the surface, and that's part of the surface of the moon.
Well, now the arrow points to the largest crater immediately
Yes.
visible, but there are, in other places away from it, in the upper right-hand corner of the picture, a number of irregularities, which could be perhaps, what, craters, pebbles, what?
Well,
Now
I
waiting
think it's
for
impossible
further
to
command
say.
on
They're
the,
probably little craters,
television system.
perhaps pebbles.
Now, apparently, you see the streak going through the center. That is the omnidirectional antenna beam. We know that to be about 3 inches in diameter, and presumably it's a little closer to the camera, but so that it might project an image on the screen on the floor below it, on the surface of the moon, about 5 inches across. Now, these must be fairly small craters.
Very small
We can see them to perhaps an inch across, would you think?
That's right.
We are now taking taking our first frame by keyboard command. There is a tape available, and many of these, there is the first 600 line picture. Again, we are where we left off last time, looking at pad number 2.
Execute.
Okay, keep no PCM on that. Roger.
Execute. 0052. Mark.
They're now beginning on the command tape.
1100 transmit. Roger.
There's the next picture on 600 line. The pictures will now be coming up.
Dock 11, this is Space. Go ahead. From the command tape. Execute next sequence. 0053.
The next sequence is now being entered. This will move the camera over and take another picture.
1100 has been transmitted. Roger.
Command has been transmitted to take the picture. There's the next picture.
Dock 11, this is Space. Go ahead. Move the tape to sequence 0056.
The tape is now being moved over to another portion of this sequence in order to avoid any chance of looking directly into the sun. These are the 600 line pictures. You will notice that the quality is a little bit better than the 200 line. This corresponds to a line scan which is more dense than the standard TV.
0056, we are ready. Roger. Dock 11, this is Space. We have keyboard command.
We are now going to use the keyboard command routine to
Time at 1 second interval 1120. Roger.
we are going to now
0 and execute
go through a series of keyboard commands.
at 1 second interval. Mark.
We'll be stepping the mirror left 14 times, each step being 6 degrees. Waiting for the stepping process to take place before taking the next series of pictures.
14 transmit. Roger.
The stepping has been completed.
Go ahead. Keyboard. Enter and execute 2 times at 1 second interval 1122. Roger. 1122.
We are now stepping the mirror up.
Second interval. Mark.
2 steps, each step 2.5 degrees, 5 degrees up.
Space from the keyboard. Enter and execute 1100.
We are now taking the next picture.
1100. Mark.
The command has been sent,
Taking a picture. Roger.
and there's the picture. One of the Omni antennas. And beneath it, the surface of the moon.
11, stand by. Roger.
The next set of commands has been sent to the spacecraft.
Has been transmitted. Roger.
The camera was stepped and another picture taken.
Dock 11 in space. Dock 11. From the command tape, execute next sequence 0057. Execute 0057. Mark.
This was supposed to be solar panel.
There is a portion of the spacecraft in view, and behind it, again, the surface of the moon.
Roger. Dock 11 in space. Go ahead. From the command tape, execute next sequence 0060. Execute 0060. Mark.
And the next next picture is now coming up. The picture is there on your screen.
Dock 11, this is space. Go ahead. From the command page, execute next sequence 0061. Execute 0061. Mark.
Each one of these commands takes a picture and then, after the picture is taken, moves the camera through a series of steps preparatory for the next picture. For those of you who are following this in the optional sequence books, the sequence number is 0064 that we are now going to be coming up on.
Dock 11, we're holding on the verify item after 0064. From the keyboard, enter and execute 14 times, that's 14 times, at 1 second interval, 1117.
They're now stepping from the keyboard.
Understand, 1117.
14 mere steps to the right, each step being 6 degrees. 14 steps will be accomplished, 1 second required for each. At the end of 14 seconds, the mirror will have stepped 6 times 14, or 84 degrees to the right.
Enter and execute 3 times at 1 second interval, 1121. Roger, 1121.
We are now stepping the mirror down 3 steps, 2.5 degrees per step, 7.5 degrees down tilt for the next picture.
3 times.
That is now accomplished.
Space from the keyboard, enter and execute 1100.
We're now going to take the next frame.
00, mark.
There is the next picture. You recognize this is similar to one of the pictures taken in the 200 line sequence.
We're ready to pick up after the verify item at 0064.
We're now going into 0064. The start frame has been transmitted, and there's the next picture in this sequence. The next sequence, numbered 0065, is now being sent. There's the next picture. Somewhat brighter appearing picture than the last.
Anybody can scale that.
Dock 11, this is space. Go ahead, from the command page. Execute next sequence 0066.
0066 sequence coming up. Another move of the frame of the mirror and another picture.
Right.
There was no TVA on the left side. Roger, we can
Right, I got you. Okay.
1100 has been transmitted.
There is a photograph of the spacecraft.
No, that's not the spacecraft. Those are about an inch in diameter, or a little less, about 3/4 of an inch.
The struts you are looking at are about an inch in diameter. Those white struts running diagonally up and down are about 1 inch in diameter. We're ready for the next. The next frame, another portion of the spacecraft.
I think we're seeing on the
Dock 11 into space. Go ahead, on the command tape. Execute next sequence 0070. Execute 0070. Mark.
Next frame is now being commanded.
1100 has been checked. Roger.
There is the next picture.
Dock 11 into space. Go ahead, on the command tape. Execute next sequence 0071. Execute.
Notice again that the spacecraft is extremely bright in these pictures, since the iris setting is for the particularly to pick up the lunar surface, which is darker than the spacecraft. Now there we are then, back looking at the moon again.
Success on top of success in unending stream. That's been the almost unexpected picture here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Successful landing, nothing damaged, every command obeyed. A series of low-resolution 200-line pictures of the moon. Then, 3.5 hours after touchdown, a series of fantastic high-resolution 600-line pictures of the spacecraft and of the lunar surface. The immediate conclusion, the surface of the moon, here at least, can support a manned landing and the footsteps of a man on space. Here's how it looked last night as Dr. Al Hibbs calmly narrated the descent to the moon.